So, does anyone remember what an attribute is? What's an essence and what's an attribute? And give me examples. Anyone remember? It's been a while. So, does any Okay, I'll just talk about it. So remember, an essence is what a thing is in itself. So there are 8 people in this chat. So I just used the word people. There are 8 human beings. So that's the essence that all of you have. Your essence is human being. That's what unites all of you. Um, and so that's the essence, right? Meaning you can take away all of the external things, and that's what you're going to be left with, human being. But then an attribute is something external, that's it's extra. Okay, so for example, Brother Basil is Bengali. Now, being Bengali is an essence or an attribute? What do you guys think? Is it essential to Brother Basil that he be Bengali, or is it just an attribute that he's a Bengali?
An attribute.
Good, it's an attribute, right? What if I said Brother Faraz, like uh, he's a rational human being? So now his rationality, is it something essential to him or is it just an attribute? What do you guys think?
An attribute.
Attribute?
No, no, it would be essential to him, right?
Oh,
Okay. Well, not according to Dr. Taha Abdurrahman, right? So, but let's leave all that stuff over there. But for vast majority of the Kalam tradition, Aristotelian, even Western philosophical tradition, the essence of humanity is rational animal. Okay? So we are animals. We have the capacity of animals, right? Like, or mammals. But what differentiates us from the category of animals and mammals is that we're rational, right? We have the power to reason. Okay, so that's the essence of humanity. Dr. Taha would say it's actually ethical. Okay. So when I say Faraz is a good person or Faraz is a bad person, now those would be essential to him. Okay. So look, people will disagree over what exactly is the essence of XYZ, but it would be very difficult for you to say that, oh, no, things don't have an essence because we act as if things do have an essence. For example, here, there are 8 people in the group. I just used the word people. Okay. uh, if there are no essence, then every single one of you, I could not tell what you were. I could, if I said there are 8 teacups in this room, that would be linguistically accurate if there wasn't an essence. Okay? Because I'm just calling all of you teacups. There's nothing that unites you guys. You guys are just like particular individuals that I just group together however I want. So yeah, there are maybe 8 teacups, there are 8 cats in the room. All of it is accurate. But obviously, you guys would be laughing at me if I said there are 8 cats in the room, right? Because there are 8 human beings in the room. There's something specific that all of you share, okay, that is essential that I'm looking at. Despite all of the color of your skin, where you were born, your height, your weight, whatever it may be, these are all attributes. You guys got it? Now, for creation, for things that are created, our essences and our attributes, they both have the common property of being dependent. They're contingent things. So they come into time and our essence stays the same across time. Okay, so for example, Faraz, he's Faraz. Uh, I don't want to guess your age, don't tell us, but let's say you're, 25 or something, and you're still Faraz when you were 12. Okay. Now he would have looked different. His height would have been different. Maybe he doesn't have as big muscles or whatever it may be, but he's still for us. So the essence is staying the same, but the attributes are changing. And the attributes change almost every day. Like for example, if I change my shirt, another attribute changed. Yeah? So if you I don't know if you trim your beard or something, which you shouldn't do, but if you trim your beard, attribute changed. Okay, you put on makeup, attribute changed. So our attributes are constantly changing, but our essence is usually staying the same. Okay? But both of those things are contingent in this world. Both of those things are contingent, meaning our essence at one point didn't exist. There were no human beings at one point. That makes sense to everybody? But for Allah, His essence, do you think it's contingent and dependent, or is it necessary? We just discussed it, right?
Necessary.
It's necessary. Good. So Allah's essence is necessary. So as a result, Allah's attributes are also what? Are they constantly changing or contingent? What do you guys think?
They're
No.
just
They're also necessary.
constant.
Good. Good. They're also necessary. Okay. So the separation that we have between Allah and His attributes, this is simply something that our mind is noticing. Okay. It's not something like, oh, Allah's attributes could have been different, could have been this, could have been that. No, both of them are necessary. His essence and his attributes. Now, here's a question for you guys. What can we know about Allah? Can we know his essence? For example, I can know, I mean, I can't really know, right? But I can sort of distinguish between human being and cat. Okay, human being's a rational animal. Cat is a, whatever, feline creature. You can use a scientific term to determine the essence, right? What can I know about Allah's essence? Can I know something about Allah's essence?
No, you can't.
Can we or can we not?
We cannot.
We just talked about necessary being, though.
You can understand the concept, but you can't understand
Well, there's
the
only
essence
one
of the
thing we can
essence.
know about his essence, which we just discussed.
Mhm.
What was that? There's only one thing. We can't know anything else.
That's necessary, but not
Yes,
contingent.
good, good, good. That it's necessary. That's the only thing we can know about his essence. Okay? We can't know anything else. Like, how is it? Is it like matter? Like, okay, it's not made of matter, obviously. So, like, what is Allah? What is his essence? How does he create out of nothing? We have no idea. Okay? Complete black box. So we will never ever understand Allah's essence, ever. And the only being that understands Allah's essence is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. No one. The only thing we can understand about Allah's essence is through a negation, is through understanding what He is not. So when we say that Allah is not contingent, then we're affirming that He is necessary. So we have to affirm, we can arrive at the conclusion that Allah's essence has always been there. It's necessary. It's the only thing that is necessary in all of existence. Okay? And from the idea of necessity, we get certain attributes. But we'll see, as we'll see later, these aren't really attributes. These aren't things that are actually like positive that we're discovering about Allah. Rather, these are things that we're negating from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? So we can't know Allah's essence, um, but we can understand the effects of his attributes in creation. And that's the second part of how we get to understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All right. So any questions on that part? So let's dive into the lecture. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, قُلِ ادْعُوا اللَّهَ أَوِ ادْعُوا الرَّحْمَنَ أَيَّمَا تَدْعُوا فَلَهُ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى ولا تجهر بصلاتك ولا تخافت بها وابتغي بين ذلك سبيلا. So very important ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, O Prophet, call upon Allah or call upon the most compassionate. So either use the word Allah or use Ar-Rahman. Whichever you call, He has the most beautiful name. So this is one of the qa'idas, one of the principles that we have to operate with when talking about Allah. That all of Allah's descriptions and His names, they have to be beautiful. Okay? فَلَهُ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى. So the Quran is telling us this. So if something in the Quran, if something is attributed to Allah that does not befit His Majesty, that is not beautiful, then we have to interpret it. We have to do, and this is the scary word for a lot of people, at-ta'wil. We have to do ta'wil. Okay? And this is an agreement with all of the Muslims, all of Sunni Islam, including the Salafis, including the Ashari, Maturidi, Sufi, Goofy, whoever, okay? Everyone agrees on this principle who calls themselves a Sunni, that Allah is only described with beautiful names. Allah is only described with beautiful names. Now, but this doesn't mean that we can sort of make up names for Allah. We can give descriptions of Allah. For example, Allah is the creator of the oak tree. The oak tree is so beautiful. So He, subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the creator of the oak tree. That's fine. According to this verse, that's fine. But we cannot give Him a name because a name is something that identifies you personally. Okay? It identifies with you personally. So you can't call Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the oak tree maker. Okay? You can't do that. So in terms of actual names given to Allah, you have to find them from the Quran and the Sunnah. You have to only find them from the Quran and the Sunnah. Because again, we said we can't understand Allah's essence. We can only understand that He is necessary. So Allah has to teach us how to refer to Him. Allah has to teach us how to refer to Him. And that's why we need revelation in order for us to understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you look at the Quran, one of the biggest themes of the Quran, it's not how to do science, it's not how to solve, psychology or this or that, because these things human beings have, Allah's given us the capacity to discover on our own. But the thing that the Quran constantly repeats to us are the qualities of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because these are the things that human beings have messed up on since time immemorial. So philosophers might accept the idea of a necessary being, but then they'll say Allah does not have a will, that every single thing emanates from Him bil ijab, necessarily. So He didn't have a choice in creating the universe. He didn't have a choice. This is just a brute fact that comes out of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of the necessary being. So the Quran comes and tells us, no, Allah is willing. He does what He wills, right? Or people might affirm a necessary being, but then say that He is not all good. Okay? In fact, there are two split personalities of the necessary being. There's the evil side and the good side, right? As the Zoroastrians did. And all of these other false ideas. So the Quran comes and constantly reminds us and tells us about who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Okay? Ta'wil is basically, we'll discuss it. We'll discuss it very much in depth. Um, I don't know if we'll have time to finish the whole thing, but we'll get to it inshallah. So let's go back to Imam at-Tahawi. We should be reading this text, but okay. So we're here. We discussed necessary being, and this was an explanation of Imam al-Tahawi rahimahullah ta'ala's statement. قديم بلا ابتداء دائم بلا انتهاء لا يفنى ولا يبيد ولا يكون إلا ما يريد. So this is what we just explained. We didn't discuss Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will. We'll discuss that today actually. Just we'll pass along with it. We won't get into too much detail. So just quickly going over this قديم بلا ابتداء. So he is eternal without beginning. Okay. Meaning there's no first moment in which he came into existence. دائم بلا انتهاء. So even and he will continue to exist. دائم بلا انتهاء. So there's no end point in which he ends up not existent. لا يفنى ولا يبيد. So لا يفنى, things in this world, they naturally perish. So you make a chair, you leave it outside, it naturally perishes away due to the weather and erosion and things like that. Allah does not perish, لا يفنى ولا يبيد, and He cannot be annihilated. He cannot be obliterated. ولا يكون إلا ما يريد, and nothing happens except for what He wills. So, if you were to say that, can Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cause Himself to not exist, right? Can Allah cause Himself to not exist? The answer is what?
No.
No.
No. Okay, simple. No, and this is not some. outside force forcing Allah and saying, "Oh no, you can't make yourself." No, no, it's that Allah's power does not link to impossibilities. Okay? So if Allah does not exist, it is a logical, impossible situation because a necessary being must always exist. That's his feature. That's what he is, a necessary being. So now you're saying, can he not be necessary? Which is a logical contradiction. So Allah's power can never ever relate to logical contradictions. وَلَا يَبِيد. He cannot be annihilated. وَلَا يَكُنْ إِلَّا مَا يُرِيد. Now we go into the attributes of Allah. Imam Tahawi, it's sort of scattered all throughout the text in terms of Allah's attributes. So I just grouped them together into one presentation. لا تبلغه الأوهام. Imaginations cannot conceive of him. ولا تدركه الأفهام. ولا يشبهه الأنام. حي لا يموت. قيوم لا ينام. خالق بلا حاجة. رازق بلا مؤنة. مميت بلا مخافة. باعث بلا مشقة. So, لا تبلغ الأوهام. Waham is the capacity of like uh, looking at sensible particulars, like sensible things outside, and then making a picture of that in your mind. Okay, so obviously imaginations cannot conceive of him because he is not something like a sensible particular, outside in the world that you see, like for example this cup or or this computer screen, right? And then وَلَا تُدْرِكُهُ الْأَفْهَامِ. Afham, faham is the ability to comprehend something in your mind. Again, a sensible thing in your mind that you can look at it in its various aspects. Okay? وَلَا يُشْبِهُ الْأَنَامِ. And he does not resemble anything that is created. وَلَا يُشْبِهُ الْأَنَامِ. حَيٌّ. And he can't resemble anything that's created because remember, anything which is created is a dependent thing. It's a contingent being. حي لا يموت, and he is always living and he never dies. قيوم لا ينام, and he is all sustaining and never sleeps. So we're going to talk about Allah's key attribute of life, حي, okay, and what it means. Okay, so let's go back here. So we already discussed what an attribute is, but there are different types of attributes. Uh, and Brother Zaid, I didn't single you out here. It's because usually in Arabic books, right? Whether it's grammar books or theology books, they'll always use Zaid as a as the example. So
Oh, well, loved it.
Daraba Zaidun, right? So Zaid got beat up, or Zaid beat Amr. They always love using the word Daraba for some reason. Okay. Zaid and Bakr, they always use, right? Zaid and Bakr, or Zaid and Amr. Okay, so you have what's called an essential description of Zaid. So remember what I said, Zaid is rational. Okay? So this is not really an attribute, but you're just describing something that is essential to Zaid, that he is rational. And then you have a real description of the essence. So Zaid is brown, meaning that there's something actually called brownness that Zaid has. He actually has it. It's a real description of his essence. So here's Zaid, and then there's something else called brown, and Zaid is brown. You guys get it? Now, the third type is a linguistic description of the essence. So if I said, let's say Zaid doesn't exist. So if you said Zaid is non-existent, now we have the essence of Zaid. We can think of it in our minds. Okay, he must be some type of human being, right? Because we usually use names for human beings. Now you're saying he is non-existent. Now, are we saying there's a thing called non-existent and then Zaid has it? What do you guys think? There's like actual thing called non-existence and
No, no, it's an
no,
abstract
it's
concept.
not, right? So we're just giving a linguistic description. This isn't something real, okay? This isn't something real. Whereas in this case, it is something real. Zaid is brown, okay? Or Zaid is wearing a coat, or Zaid is laughing. So these are actual real things that you are asserting of the essence of Zaid. And the first one, you're just describing the essence. That's all you're doing, okay? So it's not a real attribute. Okay, so let's look at Allah's attributes. Now, most of the time, when we talk about the names of Allah, what do we think of? How many names does Allah have?
99 and counting.
Right, right. We say 99. We say, a lot of people say, well, it's not 99, it's actually infinite. So the question is, how come I only have one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine? I only have 12 up here. Anyone want to guess? I only got 12 up here. So am I denying the other 99, 99 minus 12 names?
No, are the others from the descriptions or um I don't know, just
Yeah,
guessing.
so the reason that the mutakallimun and the Muslim scholars of theology they do this is that yes, most people can't memorize 99 names, but you have to know certain names and certain attributes. They're absolutely essential to your faith. Meaning, for example, if you didn't know that Allahu al-Muhaymin, that Allah is Muhaymin, okay, that he's the one who guards over, protects, whatever it may be, okay? If you didn't know that name, I mean, okay, it's not a big deal. But if you didn't know that Allah is all powerful, that would be big deal. You see? And Muhaymin, the one who protects, the one who preserves, is a what you can group it under a type of power. You guys understand? So if you know that Allah's all powerful, and somebody tells you, comes and says, Allah's al-Muhaymin, you're like, oh, of course, that makes sense because he's all powerful. So what the Mutakallimun did is they tried to find those attributes and those names, right, that are absolutely at the base. They're the essential names, and then everything else is a branch from that. Okay, so you can think of these names or these attributes as buckets. They're like buckets, like categories that you can put all of the 99 names under them. Okay? So, for example, one of the attributes, mukhalifun lil hawadith, okay, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, sorry, He is necessary. Qiyamun bin nafs, okay. Now, Allah has a name in Surah Ikhlas called As-Samad. He is As-Samad. As-Samad and Qiyamun bin nafs mean the same thing. You guys got it? Or Allah has a name called Al-Awwal wal-Akhir. He is the first and He is the last. So, what do you think those names go under? He's Qadim and He is Baqi. You see? So, Allah also has a name called Qadim. He also has a name called Baqi. And then He has a name Al Awwal wal Akhir. Okay, these are all part of the 99 names. So, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is Khabir. He is Al Khabir. He is the one who is acquainted at every single level of detail with everything. So, which category would you put that name under?
Knowledge.
Knowledge, good. Yeah, I'm highlighting it, right? So this is how these attributes work. So these are like buckets that we group all of the other names underneath. And these are sort of the essential base level names that everything else gives a different shade of meaning to. Okay? So whenever you hear, like Asharis and Maturidis, these are the two schools of theology in Islam. They deny Allah's names. No, they don't. They're just, they say instead of 99, they only believe in 12 or they only believe in 7. No, these are only categories. These are not, we're not saying that the 99 names don't exist. Okay? These are only just categories for us to understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala better. And it's much easier to memorize these than the 99. Okay? All right. So let's look at these attributes. Now, the first attributes we already discussed a little bit are the attributes of negation. And remember, we said that there's a thing called a linguistic description. An attribute, a sifa, which is just a linguistic description, meaning we're not actually asserting anything that positive about this being. So when we say that is not Zaid is not a cat. Now, not being a cat, right? Not catness is not a thing. Okay, we're asserting that of Zaid. It's not a thing. We're just saying he's not a cat. Okay, or Zaid is non-existent. Non-existent is not an actual thing that we're asserting Zaid to be. Okay, so let's look at this. So all of these attributes that we're going to talk about, these are like that. We're not asserting anything positive about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we say Allah is one, He is wahid, wahdaniyya, we're saying He cannot be multiple. Okay, each of these, you can put a not in front of it. Not, not, not. Okay, so when we say Allah is one, we're saying He is not multiple. He is not subdivided. He's not more than one. Okay, and then when we say Allah is Qadim, pre-eternal, we're saying He does not have a beginning. Okay? He does not have a beginning. Is not having a beginning an actual thing we're asserting to Allah? Like not beginningless. Is that an actual sifa? No. We're just saying that Allah lacks, He does not have something called a beginning coming into existence. He does not have that. So that's why He is pre-eternal. Everlasting. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not have an end. Okay? And necessary, we don't really understand what it means to be necessary. Like how is it like what are the uh like how is life like if you are a necessary being? We don't know. Okay? But we know that Allah is not contingent. Okay? So that's why He's necessary. He's not contingent. He doesn't have a beginning, He doesn't have an end. He doesn't have the features of contingency. You see, we're doing not. Okay? And then we're saying He is not like any contingent being. He's transcendent. He's transcendent. So all of these things, these one, two, three, four, five, these five attributes, we can actually get them from the definition of what a necessary being is. So if you ever forget, what are Allah's sifat as-salbiyya, the negative attributes? Okay? You can get them from Suratul Ikhlas. Suratul Ikhlas has all of these, and also the definition of necessary being. A necessary being can only be one. A necessary being can only be eternal. A necessary being can only never resemble anything that is contingent. You guys got it? Okay, so now we turn to the attributes, the positive attributes, we call them, because in this we're affirming some meanings for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're actually affirming things. Knowledge is a thing. Power is a thing, right? Will is a thing. Sight, hearing, these are actual things, but their true nature we don't know with respect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the attribute of knowledge, ilm, and His knowledge is different than our knowledge in many ways. And in fact, there's very little similarity that we can even think of because our knowledge is contingent. Remember, we said that everything that we know, we learn from somebody else, from somebody else, from somebody else, or something else, all the way back to tasalsul, okay? Infinite regress. It has to be from a necessary knowledge. Necessary knowledge. So Allah's knowledge is necessary. He doesn't ever learn something new or like something is obfuscated from him and then he finds it out. That can never happen. Okay? And his knowledge is all encompassing. So his knowledge of the future and the past and of every single little detail is there in the divine knowledge. Okay? And the rules of logic and all these other things, these are all encompassed in the divine knowledge. And the way that the scholars will say is the divine knowledge, it contains all of the possibilities, all of the things that are possible. Okay, which is an infinite set. And all of the things that are necessary. Okay, which is that Allah can never go out of existence, which is 2 plus 2 equals 4, whatever it may be, right? All the things that are necessary. And then it also contains all of the things that are impossible, that are mustahil. For example, you know, making 2 plus 2 equals 6. Okay? And then you have the divine will, the irada. So if knowledge is this set of all possibilities and every level of detail about every single thing, the will, the irada of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala specifies certain things within that knowledge. Okay? Just like, for example, us, we might have this is a not the greatest analogy, but let's say we have the knowledge of uh, like 5 books. Okay, 5 books. We have knowledge that okay, these 5 books, these are their authors, and so on and so forth. And now in our will, we decide, okay, I'm gonna actually buy this one. I'm gonna buy book number one instead of book number two. Okay, so this is what the will does. The function of Allah's will is at-takhsis, is specification. Okay, and this also relates back to the contingency argument that we talked about. So why is this cup green versus another color at this moment? Because the divine will. That there's something specifying it at this moment. Okay? You could say, okay, somebody colored it 2 years ago when they first made this cup. But why does the atoms of the that specifically make it green stay in that configuration from moment to moment? Because the divine will has decreed it. There's a necessary will that is decreeing the specific qualities of the cup at this moment. Okay? And the divine power is making that happen. The divine will is decreeing that, and the divine power is making that happen, is bringing it out of non-existence into existence. Okay? And now that's what the divine power does. The divine power, it brings things from Adam ila al-wujud. It brings things from non-existence to existence. And this is the only thing, the only power in existence that can do that. There's no other power, okay, that can ever do that. Now, how is it possible to bring something from non-existence to existence? That seems like a contradiction, right? So, like, how is that possible? So you can say that nothing can come from nothing. How can something come from nothing? Oh, you believers in God, don't you say that you believe in God because something can come from nothing? I mean, something can't come from nothing. So now you're saying something can come from nothing. So how would you respond to that?
Allah didn't come from nothing. He was there before nothing. I don't know.
Well, you're getting close. So basically, something is not coming from nothing, though, because the divine power is responsible for bringing it into existence. Okay, so we have a cause. What we're saying is that something can't come from nothing without a cause. Okay? But if there is a cause, which is the divine power, then yeah, something can come from nothing. Why not? Allah can make anything happen. Okay? And we have a clear cause that we have reason to believe the eternal divine power that is all powerful that can actually do this. But what you're saying, O atheist, is that the universe came from nothing with no reason. There's no cause. Okay? So, but what is the nature of Allah's power and qudra? We have no idea. How does it operate? Like how is it possible that he can create a galaxy with the same ease as he can create a human being? It's the exact same level of difficulty for Allah, right? Raziqun bila mu'na, as we saw in Imam al-Tahawi's matan there, in text, that he provides for everyone and everything without any type of difficulty um, or effort. So how is it possible that Allah's power is like that? We don't know. Okay? We don't know. But Allah's power is able and capable to do exactly that. We don't know the reality of these attributes, but we do know and we see their effect in creation. We see their effect in creation. So this is the divine power. The divine power operates to create the things that the divine will have specified. Okay? The things that the divine will have specified from pre-eternity. from forever, okay? From forever. So there was never an instance. This is only um, we're sort of going step by step, right? We're saying, okay, you know something, and then your will chooses those things, and then your power creates them. For us human beings, this is all in time, okay? But for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is just a logical ordering that we're doing. It's not actually an ordering in time. It's not as if Allah's sitting there, okay, I know these things. Okay, I'm going to will this. Okay, I'm going to make this. That's not how it works for Allah, okay? Allah's will has been from pre-eternity. It's qadim. Okay? And Allah's power is also qadim. It's eternal. Okay? So he chose certain things from pre-eternity, meaning he's always chosen those things out of his knowledge, and his power has operated on them. Okay? And decided when they will exist. And this pre-eternal Qadim will that Allah has, that He has chosen things from pre-eternity to be in a certain way with creation. This is what do we call this? Does anyone know? It starts with the word Q, and it's a central part of Islamic belief. Belief in, anyone know?
Qadr. Qadr.
Belief in the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is His, the things that He has decided from eternally. This is the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so and then we have a very important attribute called speech, kalam. Okay, and there's a big controversy in Islamic history over what exactly the speech of Allah means. Okay, there's a big controversy. And we'll go into that because it's an important thing for us to know this from our tradition and to understand it well. And then we have an extra attribute for the Maturidi school, which, our author, who's Hanafi, he's not Maturidi, he's from Ahlul Hadith because Imam Maturidi is living during his time. So Imam Maturidi's influence is not yet felt by him. He didn't even know Imam Maturidi existed. As Imam Tahawi is from the Salaf, he's from the early generation, right? So, but the Maturidiyya, and you'll see glimpses of this idea of taqween in Imam Tahawi's book. So the Maturidiyya will add an extra bucket, okay, versus the Asharis. And they will say that, look, you can have the will, you can have the power, but there's something extra to actually bring something from non-existence to existence. Okay? And the type of creation to give rizq to somebody is different than the type of creation needed to create a tree, and the type of creation needed to create a planet, or to create a human, or the type of creation to forgive somebody. Okay, all these different actions, all these different actions. Okay, so there's a special attribute, a separate attribute called taqween, creation, to encompass all of the actions of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does. Okay? So how the Maturidiyya understand it is that power is just a potential to do something. Okay? When you actually do it, that's a separate attribute. So that's why they have this thing called taqween. And according to them, and we'll get into this, that Allah's actions are eternal. Allah's actions are eternal. Him creating the cup here and now is eternal. It's just that the effect of his action, it manifests at this moment. Okay? Just like, for example, if you switch on a light bulb, and let's say you have a 10-minute delay on the light, you switched on the light bulb, and after 10 minutes, it came on. Okay? Now, did you do the action when the light bulb came on or before?
Before.
Before, right? So you did the action 10 minutes before. That's when you acted. And now 10 minutes later it came on. So the same way, all of Allah's actions, they are eternal, meaning he has acted from pre-eternity, and it's just that the effect is coming at a specific time. Okay? Can you explain with a basic example, perhaps, how non-existence to existence exists in the concept of time in Allah, since he is not part of? Is that the concept? I don't get the question, Brother Said.
So just so, I mean, maybe this is beyond, human beings' comprehension, but to go from non-existence to existence, even with Allah, requires a before and after. So how do we explain that in the context of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being eternal? Because in order for something to not have existed, I'm sorry, for something to exist, it had to have not have existed before. So how do we understand it in the context of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being eternal? Because that would also require some element of time in, I don't say element in the context of him, but in his manifestation or his action as well. That's what I would say is the taqweed. If
Right,
it's
right, right.
happening,
Okay, I get it. So from his perspective, if you're looking for things that didn't exist and now exist, you're saying that from his perspective, it would still require some type of time.
correct, right? That's from
Okay, okay. So answer is we don't know. Okay, okay. From our perspective, what we can find out is that things didn't exist at one point and now they do. So that clearly points to something called contingency. So that's from our perspective, right? Now, how does the eternal perspective look like? We can make some guesses. We can make some like I don't know, like theories, but there's no definitive answer on that. Okay? So, for example, one theory, and don't take this as Aqidah, please. Okay? Don't say that Brother Naz taught you that Einstein's relativity is it makes sense or something. No, this is a theory. Okay? One theory is they call it a block universe. Okay? So in a block universe, everything that possibly could exist exists right in front of you. Okay? And it's static. It's static. So nothing's moving. There's no such thing as movement. And movement is only perceived by an observer within that block universe. But if you're outside of it, you don't perceive it. So does that make sense? So
oh
this is
yeah,
this is
yeah.
how Einstein thought that all of existence was. Okay? And so that's why time and space are integrated. Time and space are integrated. So for
Well,
an observer that's outside of that block universe, he sees the entire full picture of it, but then the individual things within that block universe, they have a different perspective. Okay? So
it
you
kind of
could
goes
say
back
that,
what you were saying before, right? Because you'd said earlier that time is linear, but if you look at, like you said, with multiple dimensions, then everything possible does exist already. It's
yes,
just
yes, yes.
perception that
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
be.
yeah. And we would say that everything, from our perspective, everything possible does not exist. Now, there are certain Muslim scholars that held to that idea that everything possible exists. One of them, ironically, is Sayyid Nursi, rahimahullah. So he takes a lot of ideas from Sufi cosmology and like we don't want to get too much into it because I don't want to be blacklisted. Uh, but yeah, yeah. So Sufi cosmology has a much more you could say theoretical and out there type of theorizing about the nature of existence. Um, but yeah, yeah, yeah. So you could say, but we don't affirm that. We don't say that everything possible. It's just that when you're saying that everything possible already exists, yes, in one sense, it exists in the divine knowledge. It exists in the form of knowledge in the divine mind. Okay? So yes, in that sense, it does exist. But when we're talking about existence, we're saying fil kharij, in the external world. So you can think of this bubble called the external world, and it is separate from Allah. Okay, this external world is not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to specify that because there are some of the Sufis that say you can't really differentiate it from Allah. It's so closely attached to Allah. No, no, we say it is separate from Allah. Okay, it is separate from Allah. Um, so this external world, you could say it's a block universe, whatever it may be. This thing has this feature called time, and the people or the observers within it experience this thing called time. But everyone outside, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, okay, does not experience that. But uh, for Einstein's block universe, you don't get to see what people are experiencing. But we say for Allah, He gets to see, right? Sight. He has the ability of sight. He has the ability of hearing. And some of the other scholars, they also said idrak, perception. So not only is he able to see the entire picture, he's able to also perceive the individual thing that you're perceiving. So Suhaib or Brother Nasi takes a sip of tea. What is that sip like? What is that perception? Allah perceives it. You guys understand? It's not just Allah has created me and the tea and this and that, and he just sort of sees from a very like 60 million foot view. This is what the philosophers thought, by the way, right? This is why they said Ibn Sina, may Allah forgive him and um, uh, do good to him in however way, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not know particulars. These particular things, like me, like drinking a cup of coffee, he doesn't know these particular things. He just knows the universal things. He just knows, okay, humanity has these features and this like this, and he'll exist at this time and all these other things. He knows just those facts, but he doesn't know the particular things that you're doing at every moment and every single change. We say no. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the universals. He can see the 6 million bazillion foot view of everything that's going on. And also, he understands the particulars. He can perceive it. Okay? So how, when you're looking at a sunset, you feel the feeling of awe. And you're like, um, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also perceives what you are feeling. You guys understand? So what is your perspective like? Allah perceives that as well. It's not just like, oh, he created the awe in you and you just experience it. No, Allah also perceives that as well. Okay? So that's how
And would it be,
yeah.
and would it also be that he knows the choices that we would make and the outcomes for each of those
Yes, yes, yes.
choices?
Yep, and that is his knowledge, his knowledge. And this is how we can explain um our own free will, because Allah's knowledge is never something that is knowledge by itself is not something that makes something happen. Okay? So the knowledge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from pre-eternity knew that he would create this being called Basil. And Basil will have these attributes and he will be put in these certain situations. And based on his free will, he will do certain things. Okay? So this is in Allah's knowledge. Now notice, Allah's not making you do those things. Yes? He's not forcing you. He's not saying Basil will get these attributes and then I will make him do X, Y, Z. No. Basil will get these attributes and based on his free will, he will do these things. And based on that, Allah chooses to create you and gives you the power and you do those things. Okay? So even if Allah creates those actions for you, you still have that free will because Allah's creating those things based on His knowledge. Allah created you based on His knowledge. Just in the same way, for example, um, uh, tomorrow the sun is going to rise. Okay? But you're not making the sun rise, right? Your knowledge of the sun rising is not something that you're making the sun rise. So that's an example that people like to give. So we'll discuss free will and qadr inshallah next lecture. That's going to be the more detailed exploration. Okay, so Allah's knowledge, Allah's attribute of speech, kalam. So his attribute of speech is encompassed in Revelation. So this is the attribute in which he communicates with his creation. Now, uh, how is it possible that a created book, because the Quran that you read, like for example, if you're looking at a copy of the Quran, okay, that it's made, it has features of contingency, yes or no? Like this is a copy of the Quran, right? So does it have features of contingency or not?
Yes.
Yes, right? So how is it possible? And even the Arabic language has features of contingency. At certain point, it didn't exist in the specific way that is in the Quran, and now it exists. So how is it possible that this book that I'm holding in my hand, which has features of contingency, encompasses or reflects the eternal attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called speech? How is that possible? So that's a famous debate in Islamic history, and we'll go over that. And then we have the textual attributes. Sorry, we have sight and hearing. as they'll include as part of the attributes that affirm meaning for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these things, sight and hearing, and then there's another one called perception, but a lot of later scholars said, we don't really need to include that as a bucket because sight and hearing is enough. Okay? And how is Allah's sight? Allah's sight is not with eyes, it's not with light. It's a type of perception that is unique to sight. Okay, so they'll say, for example, that Allah can uh, see sounds and see sounds and hear colors. Allah can see sounds and hear colors. And this is not so far-fetched if you think about it. Like today, we do see sounds and hear colors. SubhanAllah. Like if you know, are you guys aware of like how that happens? Anyone?
No.
Anyone? The telescopes, right? The space telescopes. So we reconstruct sounds, okay? So we see sounds, we graph them, right? We put them on a graph. So we see the nature of the sound and how it's different than another sound, and we analyze and do those things. And then we can hear colors because we reconstruct. So these are microwave radiation that's coming to the telescope, and this radiation is like, sometimes it's in the form of sound, and we can reconstruct the color, okay, the color of that radiation when we're making an image. So I mean, these are things that we human beings are able to do now. Think about the nature of Allah's sight and hearing. I mean, this is something different, okay, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can see in every possible imaginable scenario, and He can hear in every possible and imaginable scenario. Okay, so now the third type of attribute are something called textual attributes. They're called textual attributes, meaning there's a these are things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like grammatically, they're assigned to Him. Linguistically, they're assigned to Him. But there's a debate over what they're referring to. Okay? There's a debate over what they're referring to. And number two, there's a debate over if we can even call them attributes of Allah. Okay. Now, the Maturidiyya, the Hanafi tradition from our school, we say that all of these things are attributes of Allah. No distinction. We don't, and we say, look, we don't know what they mean. That's fine. But we affirm them as attributes of Allah. The Ashari tradition says no, they're not. Okay. They're not. Because you need to give us evidence they are actually attributes. But rather, they point back to one of these other ones, or these 99 names. They point back to another attribute. Okay? So these are sort of metaphorical. And then obviously, what do you think the Salafi brothers say about these attributes, the textual ones?
Literal.
No, no, no. They they won't say. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Though I guess yeah, you could say literal, but that would be more of the Mujassima, the more deviant groups among the Salafiyya. But generally, the Salafi brothers, they will say that these are also attributes. Okay, these are also attributes, and um, uh, they are uh, they're different than the other attributes. These are like separate attributes for Allah, and they're different than the other attributes. Okay. All right. So that makes sense. This whole thing makes sense. Okay. And this is what we already discussed. The limit of our knowledge of Allah. We're sort of stuck in this bubble and we're sort of working backwards, right? So it's a different reality. We can know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not through His essence, but by the effects of His attributes. That's how we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah, Brother Saib, go ahead.
So one question I've always had is with the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, going back to the sight and the of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, could you make the argument that sight goes under knowledge because it's all just a way of it's all tied to knowledge. It's just it's a more nuanced approach to knowledge. So
Yeah,
are there
some
certain challenges you can
scholars,
even
yeah. Yeah,
further
yeah.
down?
Yep. Wait, sorry, say that again?
Yeah, I was going to say, so you could even whittle down I don't say whittle down, but you could put you have you were talking about the buckets, you could even go even further down and put them under maybe one or two buckets or three buckets at the most that cover a little bit more
Mhm.
because it seems like sight, like I said, would go under that.
Yeah, some people have made that argument, but it seems like there's a difference between knowledge and perception. It seems there's some type of difference between those two things because because you could for example, like if I look up um the taste of a peach in the dictionary, right? So it'll say it's a tangy texture with a hint of orange and I don't know, like juicy or something. That'll say it in the dictionary, right? So I have the knowledge, and I might even have like the chemical formulas to reconstruct the taste and so on and so forth. So I might have the knowledge, right? And you can reconstruct tastes and you can reconstruct. They do it in chemical food labs all the time. So you might have the knowledge of how to do that or how it tastes, just the knowledge of it, but actually tasting the peach is something different. So it seems perception and knowledge are two different realities. So that's why the sight and hearing, they say that these are attributes, sifat al-idrak. They're attributes of perception. And but you might say like, okay, how is sight different than hearing in this context for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because we said again that he can see sounds and hear colors, right? I mean, it seems like interchangeable. Well, answer is we don't know. It seems there's a different type of perception that sight has and a different type of perception that hearing has. But we put these attributes under these buckets because Allah constantly says in the Quran, was Samiul Basir. He is all seeing, he is all hearing and all seeing. Sami'un Basir, Sami'un Basir, right? So it seems like these are very core attributes for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He wants us to understand about Himself. Does that make sense?
Not clear,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. So there's a difference, short answer, there's a difference between ilm, knowledge, and perception. Okay. That's why some other scholars they wanted to include a 4, 5, 6, 7. They wanted to include an eighth attribute called idrak, perception. Okay. Like the perception of all of the things that can be perceived. And then we'll see. Well, that's really I didn't include life under this because that's the one we're gonna talk about next, right? But the perception attributes they all collapse under life, okay? Because only a living being can be perceptive. So I forgot to include life, Allah. So let me just include that night now. This is actually the most important attribute, right? Because all of the other attributes they flow out of this one. They flow out of life. Okay. So let's talk about the some of the proofs for life very quickly. Um, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is living, hayy. Now, what is the nature of life? Like, what does life actually mean? And we don't have a good explanation nor an answer. Now, biology tells us that life is something that multiplies, multiplies on its own versus requiring some other cause to make it multiply. But this is kind of a self-defeating definition because even us, we're not sort of multiplying on our own. There are other factors involved that make us multiply, right? Um, uh, so we don't really understand the nature of what life is. Now, Said Nursi has such a very nice definition of what life is. Okay, and he says that the life that we see in the world, it's um, it's a what is it? A gradated, like like a gradation. You guys know what that means?
Like different grades.
Yeah, yeah, like like a temperature dial, right? A temperature dial. So the more you do it, the hotter it gets. The less you do it, the cooler it gets, right? So that's what's called a gradation. So Said Nursi tells us that life is a graduated or gradated reality. Okay? And the more life you have, it means that you're able to express the divine attributes in a more intense way. Okay? So if you look at the tree of life, if you look at human beings, sorry, let's begin from a rock. Okay, rock. A rock has a type of life for Said Nursi, but it's dialed down all the way down, right? The temperature dial is all the way down because a rock can only express certain attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reflected. Like when you look at a rock, you can only picture okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power created this, right? Allah's mateen, he is strong, okay? So he is unconquerable. So when you look at the rock, you're reminded of that attribute. So there are various attributes that the rock can reflect, but these are limited. Okay, these are limited because it has a limited type of life. And then you go up the value chain, you look at a bee. Okay, a bee now can express more attributes of Allah. That when you look at it, it's reflecting more attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's exploring creation and it's interacting with other living things or even non-living things. And then you go all the way up to human beings. What you see in the human being is that they can almost reflect all of the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a limited way. Okay, so they have a very perfect form of life, a limited form of life, but the most perfect form of life that can be possible in a limited fashion. Okay, so you guys understand what he's trying to say here? Meaning, the more life you have, okay, it's the juice called life. It means the more you're able to reflect Allah's attributes. Okay, and the less life you have, it means the less intensity, you're able to reflect Allah's attributes. Okay? So even when we're defining life, we're defining it in terms of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what is the true nature of life? What is the true nature of this thing that we call life? The true nature of it, the haqiqah of it, we don't know. We can't. Okay? And we know this, right? Like try to understand like what does it mean to perceive yourself? Like stand in front of a mirror and just be amazed. Like what is this thing called life? You're able to self-perceive and you can't really describe it in any meaningful way. Besides referring back to the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so we say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, هو الحي لا إله إلا هو فادعوه مخلصين له الدين الحمد لله رب العالمين. He is the living, there is no God but Him. So call upon Him sincerely, devoting the religion to Him. Praise be to Allah, Lord of the worlds. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala emphasizes that He is living because you communicate and you commune with the living. You don't go to a rock and pray. Even idol worshippers, when they're going to their idols to pray, they think that there is some type of living force behind this idol. Okay? So we communicate only with the living. We don't communicate with the dead. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala constantly reaffirms that He is alive, that He is perceptive, He is living, that He understands what creation is going through. So, what's the proof of this? Now, the proof of this comes from the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has knowledge and power. Now, where do we get this idea that He has knowledge and power? We look in creation, okay? Things in creation pass from non-existence to existence, and they pass from existence to non-existence. This can't happen except with a being that is powerful, that is able to bring things from non-existence into existence. And you cannot do any of those things. You cannot, let's say, bring a coffee cup from non-existence to existence unless you knew all of the specifics about the coffee cup. You have to have perfect knowledge about what you're going to make. So the necessary being that is making these things happen in creation must have a necessary type of knowledge and a necessary type of power. And if you have knowledge and power, you have to be living. You must be living. Life is a precondition to have knowledge and power. Because think about it, if a computer, I can store terabytes of data within it, but would we call that computer knowledgeable?
No.
We wouldn't call it knowledgeable. It's like a box. We just put stuff in there, right? Let's say a robot, it's able to design a car door, like create a car door and like the Tesla factories and stuff and do all these things. Would we call that robot powerful? Like would we use that adjective like besides as a metaphor?
No.
We really wouldn't, right? We'd call, oh, Elon Musk is powerful, Elon, this guy is powerful. That guy, the one designing the robot is powerful. So knowledge and power must only belong to something that is hayy, something that is living. So this is why we say that that Allah's life, His specific life, is the foundation for all of the attributes. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was not alive, He would not have any of these attributes. He would not have any of these attributes. So Allah is not a machine. He's not a force. Like in Star Wars, the Force. The Force is just a pseudonym for Allah, right? But Allah is not a force. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not a machine. He is not uh, some um, some process, right? There are people that believe that God is just a process, right, that created the universe. Rather, he's a living being, and his life is a necessary type of life. It's the eternal type of life. How does that life look? We don't really know, but we see glimpses of it in the world because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives life to other creation. Okay? And another argument is like, if knowledge and power could exist in dead things, we would observe lifeless entities acting knowingly and powerfully, which is absurd. Okay? All right. We already discussed the queen. Okay. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ سَمِيعًا عَلِيمًا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ do we have time? Oh no, we're almost at time. So I'll leave that for next week, inshallah. So next week we will discuss taqween in a little bit more detail, this extra attribute that the Maturidis believe, and then we'll get into the discussion of tafweed and ta'wil, which is very controversial in Aqidah, but we'll try to get through it in a very reasonable way, in such a way that, inshallah, all of us will be able to understand and apply this concept of tafweed and ta'wil and all these other things and not be confused by them ever again. So that's going to be the discussion on the textual attributes, inshallah. And if we have time, we'll go to qadr and free will. Okay. So any questions or at time? No questions from today's class? Thumbs up. Okay, awesome. Jazakallah khair, everyone. I'll see you next week.
Assalamu alaikum.
Uh,